Welcome back to episode 2. My name is Shantea and I'm the host for today's episode, and I'm also the founder of Revealing Magazine. So today we're going to be talking about OSAP and Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario's revision of OSAP. And today I have my co-hosts Vadim, Jada, and Ashley and Stefan, who are going to be discussing.
Yo, I'm Vadim. Hello.
Hey, I'm Jada.
Hey, I'm Ash.
I'm Stefan.
Alright, so what do you guys think about Doug Ford's revision of OSAP?
First, we should explain what OSAP is. It's kind of like student grants and loans given to students in order to use towards tuition, books, supplies, and just living daily life.
So what is OSAP? So Ontario, what does it stand for?
Ontario Secondary
Assistance Program.
Ontario Secondary Assistance Program.
Yeah.
Okay. So Doug Ford, the Premier, he cut off 20%, is it, or 10%?
It was 10%.
So he cut off 10% of tuition, but he kind of like restricted more grants than loans. And it's better to get grants than loans because grants you don't have to pay back, loans you do.
Mm-hmm.
And what he also did is, so he changed the family threshold. So like now, less families. So like if a certain family has a certain income, like less families would get grants. So like let's say like my family, we probably won't get grants. Like I won't get as much in grants as I did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he changed the 6-month probation period, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So like that period is like a 6-month like grace period that doesn't accumulate interest on your debt for loans. But like now, like right after school, debt instantly, or like interest instantly.
Before anyone adds their opinion, I'm just gonna say, it seems like these people make decisions without talking to the people. Like it seems like literally that most of the time they just talking between each other, but they don't actually. There should be literally yearly surveys on every decision, like every decision politicians make before they even get it. Like I know there's separate parties, but this is a big thing. That's all I really have to say.
No, you're right. Like, but I feel like again, it has to do with like young people not voting and like black people voting. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we voted for someone who's likely to implement policies that we want, we wouldn't be like frustrated with certain decisions being made. You know? So I feel like once there is like a change in like the voting patterns within like young people, like obviously 18 and up, and within like certain communities, these things. Revisions to OSAP would just never occur, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that, with like voting, like people coming out to vote and like standing up with someone who actually is going to make a change in our government. I worked the night of election. That was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. I don't recommend it. But there are actually a lot of black people that came out to vote, and a lot of young people as well. So I don't think it's necessarily, I think we've made a lot of change with young people coming out to vote. Especially like when I first voted, I know like a lot of my friends, like we all came together, like a lot of my peers were like, we're gonna go vote, you know, let's actually put our voice in. It's the people who are like voting and who are actually put in office, unfortunately, are people who are getting votes from like middle-aged white men who are like everywhere, right? So it's kind of hard to change the outcome, but like when we have like Doug Ford just stresses me out. Every time he's on the news, he's like a little Donald Trump in our country, and it's really stressful, and I just can't anymore with him. So it's like every time he comes out with things, like he's in a position of privilege, and he's never gonna understand the sacrifices that young minority students or young students in general have to make to be able to go to school. And like Kathleen Wynne, as much as she had her own issues and things like that, she actually did a lot when it came to like colleges and universities and helping students out. So when he decides to make these plans, and then you're leaving students with like these big decisions you have to make, because first of all, once you get to university, you're 18, you're young, you don't really know that much about like finances because that's not really taught in high school. So it's like you have a government who's doing all these different things to change your life and make it so much harder. It's like, I agree, like we should have surveys and things like that, but that's like really expensive to do, and it's really hard. But there should be an opportunity given to students to voice our opinions on certain matters that are going to affect us eventually. Because for Doug Ford, he's he's not in school anymore. I don't know how if he has kids, how old their kids are, but they're probably not going to struggle with student loans and grants and things like that. So he's not talking to anybody who's affecting this. I think I don't know what he's doing. It's just he's annoying. He's really annoying,
Does
guys.
anyone know why? Like why he did this?
I think he just is. He's mainly, I think, doing it because he's one of those politicians that are very much about like cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
So he's slashed like
So he's
a
trying to
lot of
save
different.
money.
He's trying to save money essentially, but the problem is, I think the areas in which he is choosing to save money, they're the ones that are taking the hardest hit, right? Because I think you can strategize in terms of saving money for the city or for whoever you need it to, but like if you cut, because he also cut school programs too, so a whole bunch of school, like after school programs and stuff like that, where parents would allow their kids to sort of be after school and have those sort of extra programs for like high risk youth and all that kind of stuff too. He cut a whole bunch in terms of like those budgets as well, so it's like it's kind of going across the board. Not even only so much with OSAP too, but like he's been trying to sort of, I guess, save the city money, but the problem is I don't think he's doing it in the right places, and the people that need it the most are the ones who are getting the hardest hit, especially when it comes to students in OSAP. Like I work as an administrator at U of T, so I know sort of the struggle financially for a lot of students, and like at U of T they also protested it as well, and they had sort of big rallies and stuff around it, and I'm just kind of hoping that it does incite some change about it, because the tuition is extremely expensive now, so like you can easily pay upwards of like maybe $8,000 a year just to go to post-secondary education, well at the university level, maybe not so much at the college, and that is quite expensive for students. And then I think there's a sort of a downward spiral where this is concerned, because what happens is students now feel this sort of added pressure to have to work while being in school. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I'm saying like financial pressure in terms of how it affects students academically actually is a really huge part of how it changes the student's experience, because they feel this need to now have to pay for school, and they'll be working like 20 hours on top of doing schoolwork, on top of doing this, and then they're wondering like, why is it a mental health problem? And I said it's because of this sort of added pressure. There's a socioeconomic pressure of not being able to afford school, because like other countries school is free, and so you know that's a benefit to those students, because technically what it should be is if education is important and you're producing people that can go now and work, like that's kind of the whole cycle, right? So why wouldn't you make education free for the benefit of your own society, kind of thing, right? Like you're churning out people who can now in turn go work because they have education. But what's happening is students are going into universities and coming out in massive amounts of debt right out of school, and paying interest on top of that too, so you're also paying more money as the time goes by, and it's like financially it makes students feel as though they have to take OSAP because they're just like, I can't afford it.
So is there any other way, like going into post-secondary, is there any like good solution they can take to avoid this, or is there
Save.
It's not even.
I mean,
that.
if they're not fortunate, like what are they going to do? Like, they have to take OSAP.
The option's just not there for them.
Yeah.
Just,
I thought that like at some point there was talks about, I don't know how long ago, but like there was talks about making school free for students under a certain amount of income, like within their family income.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever had come of that, but I thought that would have been a huge benefit to some people who were like living in lower income families, because especially in Canada, not having access to education is a huge like disadvantage to a lot of people who
Big
don't have it. It's a
disadvantage.
huge disadvantage, right? And so people who can't afford to go to school, like school should be something that everybody has access to, but they just don't because it's too expensive. Like if you're coming to U of T, especially as an international student now pays at least maybe $50,000 a year for one of our programs.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a lot of it's about
50,000.
yeah. It's like not a joke. Like
Yeah.
if you come to engineering, for example, you pay 50,000, upwards of 50,000 a year to be there as an international student. Granted, like a domestic student, so somebody who just lives here would probably pay like 20,000 for like 20,000 for like the 4 years that you're in school, and still that is a huge sum of money for just a student, especially if you're not living in with two parents or have the best financial situation. It's like it's unfortunate that students have the abilities to get into school, but then they can't afford to be in school.
That's
like,
so
that's
ridiculous,
such a disadvantage, right? And with like the OSAP stuff, it just kind of makes it even worse, because you're supposed to have that. OSAP is meant to be that assistance to help you be in school, right?
Yeah.
And now it's working to your disadvantage because it's not. There's a lot of stipulations now that you can't get around with OSAP, and it's like, what's the point of OSAP? You can't help students.
You look like you're thinking. What's going on?
I'm like, you just said so much facts.
Oh,
like,
I'm so sorry.
I don't even know what to say too, because it's so. It's like we can do something, but we're not. At the end of the day, we're not making a decision. Like there's the way I look at it. There's a lot of basically everything in this world, everything in life. There's someone who owns it. There's someone who owns your neighborhood. There's someone who owns your gas station. There's definitely someone who owns your school. So these people, they have to make money, like you said. Doug Ford, he's trying to save money, so that's why they're charging international students $50,000. Like this, there's a lot of different, you know. I don't think it's as easy for governments or any politician to say they want to give up a whole bunch of money just for a certain cause. So I think on their end too, they just want to make money because a lot of countries are in debt in some certain in a lot of areas. So
I think the problem too is how they're spending their money. I studied politics in university, so for me, I kind of saw both ends of the situation in terms of like how money is spent, especially like in the smaller like local municipalities, and it's like when it comes to Doug Ford kind of came under fire actually recently for this fundraiser that he had, where he was charging people like upwards of so much money, like more than is probably normal to come to a fundraiser, like I think like maybe $1,000 or something like that, something kind of a little bit more outrageous, and he came under fire for that. And so it's kind of like, where is the money being spent, right? Because it's like you're cutting it from the places that need it most, but you're also abusing it in other areas where you don't need it. Because people, especially politicians, who are working in certain areas of like Toronto, they get paid a lot of money to do what they do, and they don't do that much.
do you know any area? Like, do you know the areas that are?
Oh, I don't want to call it out, but
You're gonna say
in trouble. But one of the areas, oh god, should I say it? Like one of the areas where I feel like I do know where money is definitely mismanaged is in like, I think it's like the Toronto like housing community. So there's an organization of people that deal with Toronto housing, and I think they also get paid like quite a bit of money to work on projects and do certain things. And like for example, the waterfront revitalization, like that was supposed to be done over a number of years, still not done.
No.
And it's still, no, this is like the lakeshore.
Oh.
Yeah, still not done. But so much money is being poured into it, and it's like, I just don't think that they're allocating funds properly, and the problem is the people who get hit the most are the ones who need it. And that's kind of been sort of the strategy of the government for a very long time. It's like, okay, we need money for this, and like, so we'll just take out of your taxes. But the people who get hit the most when it comes to taxes are middle class families, as opposed to larger corporations who work in Canada and pay higher taxes than we do. They get cuts because they're like, okay, well, we're gonna help you. And I mean, this goes beyond Doug Ford, but it's an unfortunate cycle that like the people sort of at the bottom get like the back end of it. And like when it comes to OSAP, which is supposed to be a way to help students, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing right now. And I think I'm hoping that student protest is really helping in that area, because I've seen people rise up and talk about tuition and talk about changing that. So I'm really hoping that trying to bring it in the spotlight will really force them to have to take a serious look at it and say, this is not, you have to make your voices heard as students, right?
Do you think it's similar to the last episode we had? Like, I mean, not too similar, but do you think like literally people just have to start protesting, even the more fortunate people? Like, does everyone has to just protest on this issue for something to be changed?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's actually very important, because not too long ago we have like, you guys all have TAs, right? Like people who teaching assistants. So they went on strike maybe like 2 years ago or whatever, because they wanted to have better sort of conditions under their union for their for like how they got paid and their benefits and stuff like that. And they protested. They blocked people from coming into like work. It was a really huge thing. They stopped working. So like for U of T, like they had to sort of find ways to make up for that. Because I mean, York is not really necessarily the best example of like TAs going on protests.
It's a little touchy subject.
Yeah, it's actually like teachers like York has not had a good time with it, but U of T they had made change, and like were forced to have to do something and change how the TA's contracts were done. So it does work and it is effective. It's just a matter of how much backing you can get and what sort of I guess sort of like stipulations that you can meet with like the people with. It's kind of it does work. It is effective. So.
I don't know, like I feel like these revisions being made to OSAP are like, it's very discouraging to like families in lower incomes, because after they feel like university is no longer an option. And I feel like citizens in Ontario in general are just paying too much taxes for that to be a reality or a norm. You know, I feel like education is something that's the only thing that can really stimulate the world to progress and for mankind to be better than we were yesterday. So once you're like not giving the future Einsteins the opportunity, you know, to like go to school because money is restricted, then you're basically saying that we want the world to be stagnant in a sense, you know. So
but I feel like these are systematic ways in keeping like the rich and like the poor, because like if we're not giving, or if the government is restricting certain things like government assistance to go to school, how are the poor going to become middle class, from lower class to middle class to even upper class? Like they're keeping these people they're giving these restrictions so these people don't move up in society, and it's systematic, you know. It's been there.
Well, I genuinely don't think that Rob Ford is like, he has that mental mind frame, like I need to hold these type of people down. I really feel like it's more like money making and corporate, to the point where it's just like the government needs to take in more revenue in order to fulfill their own agendas, whereas it doesn't matter if we're neglecting them. I feel like there's a lot of selfishness and ignorance, but I generally don't feel like I don't feel like no human being has like the heart or the mind, at least I hope, to be like, I'm gonna intentionally like keep a certain amount of people down.
That greenness is still systematic, because like like they want that revenue, but like they want that revenue, and they know who it's affecting. They know the like the racial groups that are being affected mainly. So in a way, like I guess you could say like, yeah, he's not the next Hitler or whatever, but he's still doing these things for a certain purpose.
He looked it off. He looked at it and just pretended like he didn't see it. They definitely know.
It's still kind of evil, to be honest.
Yeah, they definitely know.
But I think like that's also why in a lot of cases like people don't vote, is because a lot of times they're trying to unfortunately choose between the lesser evils, and so they're not motivated to vote because there's a lot of these kind of false promises from people in government. It's like they say one thing, and when they actually get into power, a lot changes.
False prophets.
So, it's a lot of like, it's just not, you know, I kind of, unfortunately, I didn't really expect it with Doug Ford, because I thought that Doug Ford was kind of more of like a man of the people, kind of like more like his brother was, I guess. And then I think like when he came into office, like a lot of things changed in terms of like his agenda and stuff like that, and I wasn't really like too down with it. I was kind of like, hey, like I thought that you were more like this, and I think so. I think the level of trust between people and their politicians who represent them, it's changed a lot too. Where people don't even want to vote anymore because they just don't feel like they're going to be heard or represented. Especially young people, right, who are sort of the next generation. Like, I think what happens a lot with young people is like our voices are not necessarily being heard. And so we're trying to do more and find ways to get ourselves out there, but we're the population that's at a disadvantage, because we kind of get like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to this stuff sometimes, because we're not looked at or viewed as like having influence or, you know, being powerful enough to make our voices heard. But that's not true. I think I've seen a lot of cases, and I work in that sort of environment, so I know that students definitely still have a voice and can still, you know, make effective change. It's just like, we have to start somewhere, right? Like we have to say this is not right, this isn't fair, and we have to actually actively do something about it. Like we can't just kind of sit back and expect other people to do it for us. Like we have to sort of go out there and say, okay, like this is affecting us, and we have to take a stand, like one way or another. So like that's one way in which you affect change. Voting is definitely another too, because you put you choose who you want to be in sort of in your politics. So
It's funny you say that because a while ago when I was in grade 10, I don't remember what class and what teacher this was. I think it was civics. So yeah, so it was civics, and there's this teacher I had missed. I wish I would remember him because he was such a nice teacher. He made us, yeah, he had like the funnest games ever. He made us all like, this was when Justin Trudeau was getting elected. He made us all like do a student, because we obviously weren't legal like to vote, so he made us all do a student like or not election, just all of us vote like a mock type of thing. And I think more schools did it, and it went on the news or whatever. But just things like that, like when we were talking about the last episode, we need people like teachers also to help us, like, you know, we need support from school principals, like we need support from everybody. Because yeah,
that's very true too. Because like I kind of work on like the end of being an administrator, and I don't think the administrators actually, who do have some say in terms of like what happens in the university, like actually back up the students on this too. Like I think it's not an effect, like it's not something for us where we're kind of like saying, yeah, this isn't right for the students, and we're kind of pushing that support behind you, right? Because for the TAs, they did get support from the administrators during the time when they when they protested. And so I think it's like also our responsibility too, as educators, as administrators from the university, in this case more specifically, to sort of back you guys up on these things, because I mean in some cases it could impact our jobs too, but at the same time it's kind of like, it's just, if we're administrators, then our whole purpose is that education should be accessible to everybody. Like that's our role and our responsibility. And so even though it may involve something that, like with pay and stuff like that, we should still be like, behind our students to say that that's the whole purpose of like the university or college. It's that education is accessible to everybody. So maybe we should be doing more too. Like I don't know.
So do you feel like the educational system and like all these other institutions are like the reasons why like politicians like Doug Ford are like, you know, are active right now? Like, is that something you feel like the education's failure to really encourage or motivate students to go out and vote and to know what's really going on within the political systems and how it impacts them? Do you feel like that's the reason why you have?
No, you know who we're leaving out too? We're leaving out like, I've never heard my mother, like I love my mother, but I've never heard her tell me to vote. Like I've never ever heard her talk about politics to me, because she gives up, like my parents give me that mentality of they're not anything, like there's, I don't even want to talk about politics, CNN this, CP24 this, like you said, it's almost like you're choosing the lesser evils, like, you know, who's, you know, least worst, like that, who can I vote for? And that's the mentality my parents showed me, that like, so I growing up I was never that interested in politics. I was gonna say, it's funny you say that, because like Ontario, like Toronto's like the only place someone will say, what are you saying, what's up, are you good, and just keep walking, not even wait for your response, you know? But like literally that's how it is, like we don't really talk to each other like that.
But you know what, not to cut you, but you know what's so sad is like, because we used to live in Toronto, like we lived like, they call it the hood, but when me and Safa were growing up, it wasn't the hood, that was like where we lived. And like when you were like out of the building and like playing basketball, your mom, your grandmother, your auntie, like everyone knew each other. So we knew like of all the situations that was going on, like, oh yeah, you know, like da 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 da, she cussed out her kid, da da da, like you knew, you know what I'm saying? But when you like move into like areas like this, it's just like people are like so consumed, like the middle class have so much power, but they're so consumed only with themselves, like I can't tell you who these people are. You know, like it's sad. And it's like you lose that sense of community that you find in like marginalized communities, rather than these communities that run Canada, because the middle class runs Canada, you know. So
that is true, because in neighborhoods like this, you'd see like in no offense, like you'd see less children playing outside, like in neighborhoods like this. But if you go to like a gated, you know, type of like hood community or something, you'll see a bunch of people, and they all correlate with each other. But the thing is, when you're like, the thing is, this also relates to what Ashley was saying, when like we don't really get educated like that to learn about these issues. Like she learned so much about, what was it, your teacher,
Oh, on Miss Wildfoot.
Yeah, you learned that, but that was in your last year, like your grade 12th year.
12th year, yeah.
And for me, I really didn't know what voting was until I remember his name, my grade 10 civics teacher, Mr. Gallagher. I really didn't know what OSAP was until grade 11, and I feel like that's something that should be taught to your whole family, to be honest, since before you even enter high school. So a lot of these things we need to just educate ourselves so that we know going into these problems how to avoid them. Like that's literally what I think it is.
Yeah, because even for me, I remember they only told us about OSAP like our 12th year, second semester, when we're about to, or like first semester when we're about to apply for unis and colleges and all this stuff. But like these things should be taught from like grade 9, you know, or even grade 8, grade 9, because like we don't really, as a grade 12, we don't understand OSAP. Be like, okay, I'm gonna sign up, you know, I put in my parents' information, put where I live, and I'm gonna get some money in my account. But we don't really understand like the significance of OSAP, especially like we don't understand until like later when it actually affects us. And I feel like that's just a problem. And that's just how society is structured. Like they don't really teach us these things because they know less people are gonna sign up for OSAP once they actually learn like how bad it is for you. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of these institutions, I feel like schools like U of T, I'm from there, but I have to put them on blast because it's just the truth. Like I feel like they need to offer more like financial programs for students. Like they do try with like the grants and stuff like that, but with these revisions made with OSAP, the only way to really correctly rebuttal it is doing it systematically and just doing it in a way where it's okay, fine, OSAP, Doug Ford wants to increase interest, whatever, but we will try to like give more grants, more higher grants for students who prove that they are lower income, so that way they feel more inclined, and they should be entitled to the same education that these kids who have rich families and who don't really need OSAP, you know? Because I met a lot of students who don't need OSAP and whose parents are paying for it. Meanwhile, I need to hold on a job, you know what I'm saying, and still get readings done. So like I feel like we're living in a society where an equal playing field is really necessary, you know, because then you're just you're gonna stop the future Einsteins and the future like Steve Jobs, you know.
Chantel's really speaking these facts today.
No, but it's true. Like it's true. Like Apple has declined. Like iPhone's not the same. Let's just be real. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you need to stimulate. You need to attract creatives, and you need to attract intellectuals. But there's a lot of people that I know who literally like take 1 year, 2 years just to like save up for school because they don't have the money for it. And then like, and it's real life, like getting to school if you're commuting is a lot of money. Like people have to make sacrifices and be like, you know, like you have to make sacrifices and be okay, I see these like nice shoes that I want, but I kind of want to go to school next week. Which one? Like
you can still eat. Like, still eat food. Just miss your lunch 2 days.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like kind of got macaroni and cheese, we're gonna have to rough it out, you know? Biggie small, sardines, like we gotta do that.
Oh, sardine. Oh my god, deep. You got one back. Yeah.
So, you know, but like, I don't know, I just feel like Doug Ford is a very selfish guy, and I'm gonna stick to my opinion on that.
Yeah, you're revoking his black
So
card.
we're going around.
So who wants to revoke what's his name?
Doug Ford.
Doug Ford's
Cancel.
moral card.
Also card.
2019.
Moral card?
His moral card.
Or like
Making cards.
his politician card.
His
Like,
politician
Politician
card.
card, I'll revoke.
I'm gonna revoke it. Do you revoke it?
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I think you might have to do that one more time.
Yeah. I don't know what just happened. There you go.
Oh, yeah, so I revoke Doug Ford's moral card.
I revoke Doug Ford's politician card, and I revoke his black card too because I kind of gave Rob Ford like a little bit of that.
That's so
You know?
true, yeah.
I'm gonna
I
revoke
thought he
it
was
now,
one of us.
okay?
I don't lie.
Yeah, we can revoke his politician card. I mean, he's in office for the next 3 years, so I mean, we have to live with his decisions. But if we could do it tomorrow, sure, he'd be out of office.
I'm definitely revoking his moral card. If you're a politician and you're not doing everything you do for the young ones, what is your purpose? Like, that's literally the next generation. So it doesn't matter what this guy's doing, I'm revoking it. Because it's It's not fair.
See, no more Doug Ford. I'm just joking. But like, thank you guys so much for watching episode 2. Be sure to be back for episode 3 next week. Bye.
It's like that's literally the next generation. So it doesn't matter what this guy's doing. I'm revoking it because it's not fair.
See, no more.